Sometimes the worst injustices don't happen in courtrooms or on the evening news. They happen right in your own driveway. When someone decides that their entitlement is more important than your livelihood. Imagine waking up, ready to work your land, only to find your barn door blocked by a bright red Bentley, parked sideways like it owned the place. Now add the fact that it wasn't just anyone's Bentley. It belonged to an HOA neighbor named Karen, a woman known for weaponizing rules against people she didn't like. But that day, she pushed the wrong man too far. Glen Austin had lived on the edge of his small farming town for more than 20 years. His land wasn't large or glamorous, but it was his sanctuary, a barn full of tools, feed, and machinery that kept his small operation alive. His house sat just outside the carefully manicured homes of the nearby subdivision, a place ruled by HOA committees that seemed more focused on appearances than real life. Among those HOA enforcers was Karen, a woman known for her sharp tongue and tighter rules. She had taken special interest in trying to push Glen around. It wasn't that she didn't like barns or tractors, it was that she didn't like him. She made small comments about the look of his land, hinted that his old pickup truck was an eyesore, and even complained about the way his chickens sounded at sunrise. Still, Glen ignored the pettiness. He had work to do, and a farm doesn't run on neighborhood politics. But trouble escalated when Karen pulled into his driveway one Tuesday morning, swinging open her shiny red Bentley's door with an air of arrogance. She parked it directly in front of his barn and walked away like she owned the ground beneath her wheels. For Glen, this wasn't just an inconvenience, it was sabotage. That barn housed tools he needed for the day ahead. And as a man who'd worked too hard to be dismissed, he knew exactly what this meant. Karen wasn't blocking his path on accident. She was sending a message. But if Karen thought her wealth or HOA title made her untouchable, she was about to learn a painful lesson in respect. The first time Glen saw the car glistening in the morning sun, he thought maybe she had made a mistake. Maybe she had accidentally chosen his property to park while visiting a neighbor. Give her the benefit of the doubt, he told himself. But when he walked around the side of the Bentley, he noticed the smug precision. It wasn't parked haphazardly. It was wedged across his entrance like a barricade. Every attempt to move around it failed. Glen couldn't get a vehicle in, couldn't pull hay out. His entire morning was held hostage by a luxury car that didn't belong there. He found Karen on her porch across the street, sipping coffee as if watching a spectacle. She ignored his wave, turned her head slightly, then disappeared back inside. This wasn't new. Over the past year, Karen had grown bolder. She filed complaints against Glen to the HOA board, insisting that his barn didn't meet the neighborhood's visual standards. None of it mattered to Glen's actual property rights, but still, the harassment wore him down. What made this morning sting most was the clear intent. It wasn't just about land or aesthetics anymore. It was about dominance, about showing that her Bentley and her influence mattered more than his hard work. The symbolism wasn't lost on him. Her bright, gleaming car blocking his weather-worn barn. One shouted indulgence, the other whispered perseverance. But even symbols have limits, especially when livelihood is at stake. Minutes turned into an hour. Glen's chores piled up, his animals grew restless, and his patience frayed. He made a final attempt. Walking to Karen's door, knocking firmly but respectfully, no answer. Just the faint sound of television inside. By now, frustration had built into something heavier. It wasn't just her car. It was every little slight, every snide note, every time she weaponized her power against someone who simply wanted to be left alone. He could feel the weight of years pressing on him, the way society often allowed some to rewrite rules just because they could afford to. And in that moment, staring at the Bentley, Glen knew what had to be done. He climbed into his tractor, turned the ignition, and rolled forward. The sound of the engine's growl filled the air. Neighbors peeked through curtains. Karen's curtains twitched too. She reappeared on her porch this time, wide-eyed, clutching her phone as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. But Glen wasn't bluffing. The first crunch of metal against steel was louder than anyone expected. The Bentley's polished red paint cracked under the weight of Glen's tractor, crumpling like paper against the machine that represented his livelihood. He didn't stop. He drove forward until the luxury vehicle that once gleamed so brightly was now twisted and useless, crushed beneath the weight of a man who refused to be disrespected one more day. Karen screamed across the yard, but her words didn't matter. Authority had been abused for too long, and this was the tipping point. The neighborhood buzzed with whispered shock, but none dared to interfere. They all saw what this really was, a clash between unearned entitlement and hard-earned resilience. To Glen, each scrape of metal was not just destruction, it was reclamation. For once, he had flipped the power dynamic. He, the farmer, overlooked and underestimated, had silenced the HOA queen with sheer determination. And for Karen, that sight would never leave her. Her prized possession flattened into wreckage in mere minutes. When the dust settled, Glen parked his tractor back beside the barn. He didn't gloat, he didn't yell, he simply went back to his work, the way he had every day before this morning. Karen tried to cry foul, dialing the HOA, then the police, but her own arrogance betrayed her. She had trespassed, she had blocked, she had been warned. Those simple facts stripped away her power. Legally, she had overstepped, and the consequences rested solely on her. Neighbors who once whispered about Glen's old ways began nodding their heads in quiet agreement. Sometimes you have to stand your ground, even when the odds seem stacked against you. Glen hadn't wanted war, but when pushed into a corner, he showed that strength was not measured by wealth, but by resolve. In the weeks that followed, Karen withdrew. Her power over the HOA weakened. That shiny red Bentley, replaced eventually, became nothing more than a reminder of the day her entitlement hit an unmovable force. But the greater impact wasn't the crushed car. It was the whispered conversations around town about fairness, about respect, about the ways people use privilege and power to try to diminish others. Glen's act sparked reflection far beyond his barn doors. And so the question lingers. When those in power shove you aside, when they block your path with the weight of their arrogance, what will you do? Will you move quietly? Or will you push back until they finally regret it?